Fáilte everyone, you are very, very welcome to this, another in the Mind Your Precious Self series. And this one has the rather intriguing title of Midlife Crisis or Midlife Opportunity. Well, I think the best thing I can do is start off by telling you that I've been there, I've done that, and I've worn the proverbial t-shirt. And I'm here to give you some tried and tested tips that you might put into practice for yourself. Now, the interesting thing is, midlife crisis is one of these terms that it's used in modern times, but there's an element of, does it really exist? Is it one of those old-fashioned terms like spinster or bachelor or those type of terms that we don't necessarily like to use? But of course, it is a particular phase of life. Now, back in the day, in the mists of time, many moons ago, there wouldn't have been a midlife crisis as such because our ancestors didn't live as long as we do. And our modern lives have changed irrevocably. We have a schooling period that goes on much longer than it did back then. Many of us choose to do some sort of extra study. Then we get around to setting up home. Maybe there's the business of being parents and family. And of course, it's after we have established some sort of work practice or career or profession or whatever it is we feel called to do. Generally, midlife is in and around the 40s. If you think about it, most people live these days into their 80s, some into their 90s, but we'll average, say, around the mid 80s. So that means that your midlife is around 42, 43. And what happens at that stage of life? Well, for many, there might be the children are beginning to leave the nest. So there is that empty nest syndrome going on. It might be a time in life where you have established whatever career you have chosen, and there might be an element of boredom setting in. You've kind of reached all the accolades, or you've done as much as you can. It might be a sense of repeat. And if we think back to when we were in our teens, there's so much in life to look forward to. Oh gosh, we can't wait to go to our first dance, to meet somebody, to travel for the first time. There's all of these great milestones that we have to look forward to. But when we reach our midlife, the milestones are maybe not of the best variety. We might think, what have I to look forward to? The same old, then retirement, old age, death, is that it? In other words, there can be, shall we say, an existential element to this particular phase of our lives. It may be different for men and women. For women, around the 45 mark, we are coming into perimenopause. And fairly soon, depending on your particular cycle, it will mean that our childbearing years are over. Now, whether you choose to have a child or not, whether you've decided, well, I have 2 or 3 or 4 and that's enough, no longer having the choice is a particular time in life where we need to think, oh, that option is now closed off for me. I can't change my mind. It's complete. And that in itself can bring up a certain, something to ponder, something to think about. The male menopause, as it's anecdotally referred to, can fit into the midlife crisis that a man would have, which may be different for women in the sense that, and I'm generalizing here, but for a lot of men, their self-worth is very tied up in their career or their profession. And if you've reached as far as you're going to go in your career, you may start to see younger people overtaking you. And that can be a big dent in the male pride. Now, of course, that can happen to women too, and men can equally be affected by the empty nest when one minute the family are all around and there's great noise, excitement and new things happening, and suddenly they're all gone. And in that case, a couple may turn around and look at each other and go, oh, I used to know you, I used to love you, but all of the family got in the way, so to speak, and there might be a rejig needed there. Let's see if any of those symptoms are ringing any bells for you. And let's see what we can do to flip from the crisis to the opportunity. Now, if you will, I'd like you to imagine your life as a road. And at this point in our life, there comes a fork. One way is the crisis, one way is the opportunity. And we have a choice. We can decide to go down the, what do they say in the movies? I shoulda, I coulda, I woulda. Or we can realize there is a magnificent opportunity here. For us women, we no longer have to worry about getting pregnant. We are getting to the point where our periods, our moon time, our menstruation is stopping. So again, that's one more thing that we move beyond it. Menopause can be a scary time and there are some fairly serious symptoms. However, if we look at the opportunity rather than the crisis, it's our physical body's changing system, resetting, and asking us to eat, drink, and exercise and rest in a different way. If we cut back on the sugar, if we cut back on the alcohol, if we exercise perhaps in a different way, because our energy does change as we grow older, then the symptoms of menopause will ameliorate hugely. And of course, there may be an opportunity to try the many holistic treatments that are out there, particularly acupuncture and reflexology, and they have untold effects on this particular transition in our lives. But it also gives us a chance to reset any little ailments going on in our body, whether we carry arthritic symptoms that might come down one side of the family, or stress and worry, which might lead to heart palpitations in another. These holistic treatments give us a chance to bring into balance. So there is an opportunity straight out of a crisis situation, from menopausal pain to relief for it and for other things. And of course, if we reset how we eat, how we exercise, and how we drink, that's going to have an effect on our energy levels and how we look. Now, I really am talking here about an opportunity for maximum, optimum health in your life. I'm not talking about any particular size. That all depends on your genetic background. But I do know that if you feel energetic, if you feel healthy, that can go a huge amount of a way to opening up new opportunities, to rejigging how you are. I'm going to tell you something interesting that you may or may not know. Over April and May, certainly here in the middle of Dublin City in Ireland, the blackbird song was, so beautiful. It would just melt your heart. And I asked my husband the other day, I said, where are the blackbirds gone? And he said, well, I'm not sure where they are at the moment, but he said, I do know in August and September, you will rarely see a blackbird about because they hide. Really? I thought this was strange. Why? And he said, well, the reason they hide is adult blackbirds will molt, their feathers will fall out, and they're very vulnerable. So naturally, they go into, I suppose, in the middle of a tree, or they go into a quiet place, and the feathers fall out and then they regrow. I would imagine at the moment they're fattening themselves up to be able to sustain this particular period. Okay, that's interesting. An eagle, it is said, the king of the birds, an eagle will live 40 years. That's a long time for a bird. But it is said that certain eagles will, at that age or approaching that age, their claws, their talons become blunt, their beak becomes blunt, that they will go up to their eyrie, their big nest usually in a high place. And wait till you hear this. They pluck out their feathers and they wait for them to regrow. They pluck out their talons, and then they even pluck out their beak, giving them time to regrow, to have a new life spurt. How amazing is that? Now you can imagine this eagle is going to be in a very vulnerable place. Firstly with no feathers, then no talons, and then no beak. But at midlife, we have an opportunity to do a mini version of this. Bear with me now for a second. If we go over to India, back in the mists of time, you would see, and even still today, you would see certain people walking around with wearing saffron robes, and they might have a stick and they might have a little food bowl, perhaps even a bell. And it is said that people coming into their elder years shed, they let go, and they go on a walkabout, a bit like the Australian Aboriginals, and they go on a walkabout for a woman around menopause and for a man the equivalent time, to find themselves, to discover, after being a student, after being a parent, or whatever you mother or fathered, whether that be projects or creative or babies or children, so that in the third phase of your life, the golden phase, you get to think, okay, I've had certain life experience. Now what do I want to do? And I'm hoping that you have met at some point older people, not that much older. We're talking about 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, even the 90s, who are doing amazing things. So those opportunities include traveling. They include going back to study. They include new hobbies, new interests, new romances. Anything goes. I'm thinking of one man I know, a very interesting man, who was retired from a high-powered business, and he was retired at 65, and he knew he had years more in him. He didn't want to retire, but that was what they did. Sat at home bored stiff for a couple of months, and then he decided to retrain as a holistic therapist. Everybody thought he was cracked. And then he began to get interested in how he was eating, how he was exercising. This man is in his mid-80s. Not only is he a holistic therapist, but he's training other people worldwide, and untold energies. I'm thinking of another woman I know, absolutely incredible woman, and she does something really interesting. Now, she hasn't done it for a while, as you can imagine, but she has this little suitcase, the type of suitcase you bring on a cabin of a plane, and she has it packed. In fact, she has two versions of it. She has one packed in her hallway, and she liked to go onto a website, something like lastminute.com, something like that, and she'd check any special deals going with flights here, there, or whatever. And then she might call her friend. She had a list of friends, and she'd say, right, okay, who's ready? We're going off to Vilnius, Prague next week. Oh, I'm off to Madrid, or whatever. It might be mini breaks or it might be holidays. And she became the travel queen. And her friends and some of her family delighted. She had a whole new relationship with her goddaughters, her godsons, and her nieces and nephews. And they were like, oh my gosh, where's she going to go next? Fantastic. I know many women, and I hold up my hand because I went down this route. I went and I studied, I did a master's and I did a PhD, and I really travelled within for that opportunity. I was at a point in life where my career and that of my husband was set that we could afford for me to do these studies. I could afford to take some time off from my clients to really explore and to push myself. Now, I have to say, although it was an opportunity, not a crisis, it wasn't easy, but it was a real chance to see what I'm made of, to follow my dreams, something that I wished I could have done when I was younger, but at the time didn't have the money or the opportunity to do that. Midlife opportunity can be that going within or going without. Please don't have the old-fashioned image of once you hit a certain phase of life, you need to get the slippers and plonk yourself in front of the TV. That's it. It's all over. If we have that mindset, we can change it. And if anybody else in your vicinity, perhaps even your own immediate family, tries to funnel you down into that, well, you can say, thank you, but actually, I'm going to take up art. I want to be able to walk around the park and see my paintings on the railings when I go to Stephen's Green or when I go to Merrion Square, which are the places in Dublin. I'm the one that always wanted to be a hairdresser. And you know what? I think I'm going to study it now. Why not? I'm thinking of another time I went to the cinema, the art house cinema, and oh my gosh, it was one of these experiences where you watch the film and then there's a talk afterwards. And they do this also in theatres. And I looked around at the sea of fabulous looking men and women, the mane of grey hair, and the erudite conversation, the verbosity of the angles they were seeing this film. I was blown away, absolutely blown away. And I thought, these people have so much to contribute. We don't have to look very far for our own president, Michael D. Higgins, and his wonderful wife, Savina. Here's a man who is certainly not in the first flush of youth. He's an elder statesman. And during the last while, he's been doing these amazing videos, free on the public domain, on the YouTube, and really amazing subjects. Again, he didn't have to do them, but he felt the call. His wife, very much into theatre and arts, a real patron of the arts. I think both of them are. And again, nobody's asking them to do it, but they feel led in that direction. So if we spiral back to our life and then we look at the crisis and the opportunity, there's a pinch point here where we get to choose. And sometimes the pinch point can be an actual crisis, such as a physical, something happens. Maybe we get a diagnosis, or maybe we get a real warning sign that we have to, step back and do something about. Now, that's certainly not pleasant, but I have met people in my career who've said, amazingly enough, I'm glad I had that heart attack. I'm glad I had that cancer scare. It gave me the opportunity to realise I can change my life. I can do something different. We've all been brought up a certain way. Few of us have a charmed existence. Our parents, they do the best that they can. But it's not always what we need. And they pass their values down to us. And some of those values are great and some of them aren't. A key part of life is for us to reach maturity, to look back at our formative years and think, that was good, we like that. Oh, that was terrible. But not to blame anyone else, but to take full responsibility for our own life and to flow on, to decide, there are opportunities out there. If we keep our brains active in a very positive way, and that can be bridge or bingo or book clubs or whatever, then we're not going to stagnate. If we feed our bodies with optimum fresh food, gardening's become an amazing way of finding solace and really hope when you plant your seedlings and you see them come up. And there's been a wonderful phenomenon now where grandparents are working with the children, the little ones, and they're bringing on their gardens together. What a gift that you could pass on to the next generation. Reinvention is a possibility. And it's at this midlife point. You might be listening to this thinking, oh, it's too late for me. It's never too late. You might be listening to this thinking, oh, well, sure, I'm only 35. I'm way too young from this. Listen, 42 is knocking on the door. Those ads you see in the back of the bus where you see a young couple running down the beach and they say, this is what pensioners look like these days. In other words, this is the time that you need to be looking forward, planning for the future. And I think this particular time of the year, summer, where it's bright late into the evenings, there is that sense of hope, is a really good time for us to contemplate the midlife crisis and turning it in to a midlife opportunity. Mille buíochas, 1,000 thanks. I hope that was helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing you at another one of these Mind Your Precious Self talks. Especially Dr. Karen Ward, and it's an honour to be here.